Wild, who's Conservative MP for North West Norfolk, and joins me now. James, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
And thanks for joining us this morning. So I suppose, first of all, your gut reaction, really. It's official, he's going.
It is. I think it became inevitable. I voted for him in the vote of confidence last month, but that was on the basis that this was an opportunity to reset and restore the high standards that people expect in public life, that people in North West Norfolk and across Norfolk rightly expect. And unfortunately, that hasn't proven to be the case, and events in recent days and how they've been handled has just underlined that. So enough was enough. And it's obviously disappointing that it's ended like this after the very successful election campaign in 2019 and the good things that the Prime Minister's done in delivering Brexit, the rollout of the vaccine programme and many other things. But ultimately, his position became untenable. We now need a new leader who can restore the public trust that's been lost and restore the good governance that people rightly expect to see.
And I suppose on one hand, some of your constituents this morning may have sort of seen your message, and I know you say, we need a change of leadership, and as you say there, enough is enough. And some of your constituents this morning might be going, well, what took you so long, James? Why only now are you saying this? But I suppose on the flip side, and I think George Freeman touched on this morning as well, I think for any MP to come out and to declare this, it's with a very heavy heart, isn't it? It's not an easy thing to do.
It is. Changing Prime Minister is a massive thing to do, and it shouldn't be done lightly. And I, along with a number of other colleagues, have reluctantly come to this conclusion when, yes, other constituents have called on me to do this beforehand. They didn't want me to vote for him in that vote of confidence, but I did that because I didn't think it was a responsible thing to do at the time, given the economic and the international situation we face, and that this was an opportunity for him to then change, to bring that grip to number 10 that had been lacking. And sadly, that hasn't proved to be possible. So that's why I reluctantly and regrettably came to the conclusion that the situation couldn't continue. And we need to have a change and then get back to focusing on growing the economy and delivering all the things in the manifesto, which won support across the country and gave us a large majority. We still retain that majority. And under a new leader, I hope we can renew our focus on delivering for what people want and what people voted for.
And of course, we're told that Mr. Johnson won't be going until the autumn. So, I mean, how do you sit on that? Does he need to go right now? Because I know Mid-Norfolk MP, again, George Freeman says, he's not fit to govern now. He can't stay with others in the party saying the same. So, I mean, are you happy for him to continue until autumn, or is now the moment?
Well, in previous situations, Theresa May stayed on as Prime Minister, having resigned as leader of the party whilst the leadership competition ran, that led to Boris Johnson being elected as leader and then taking over. I'm not sure plunging further uncertainty by appointing someone else as an interim Prime Minister makes a whole lot of sense. The Prime Minister retains those strong relationships, particularly with President Zelensky in Ukraine and with his international counterparts. So I think it's probably best that we get the leadership competition underway so that people can put forward their manifestos. And in the interim, we have a bit of stability rather than having further uncertainty.
And I know one of the phrases that Mr. Johnson used to like to use was, get the job done, get the job done. I mean, as an MP, if he's kind of still sitting there, can you really get the job done?
Well, the reality will be that he won't be able to take forward any new policy initiatives during that period, but we'll be able to continue the policies that we have of securing weapons and support for Ukraine, continuing with the economic support package that is there to help people with the cost of living. This week, the national insurance cut will start. That's going to deliver people £330 this year. That's on top of other energy bill reductions and payments that are going to the most vulnerable households. So there's a lot of work already in train, but he remains the Prime Minister, and he won't be able to take forward new initiatives rightly, and he will do essentially what Theresa May did when she was Prime Minister, carry on as an interim.
But I suppose in the interim, I mean, when it comes to the ministers who've resigned, how are they going to work under him, I guess? Because, I mean, we've had a lot of resignations, some that have only been in the role for 2 days. That's going to be a bit of an awkward work meeting, isn't it?
There is, yeah, absolutely. And there'll need to be ministers. Hopefully some of those will be returning to the portfolios they had. I mean, I think ultimately that this isn't really about policy differences, which is what happened when Theresa May resigned as leader. This is really about how the government has been conducted and how Number 10 has operated, and the standards that we as MPs and on behalf of our constituents expect to see. And unfortunately, there's been too many instances where they've been found wanting, and then the corrective action that's been required has not been followed through. So as I say, it's regrettable that we're in this situation. It's not a small thing to call for a Prime Minister to go. I reluctantly did that along with other colleagues, and I'm glad that he's now accepted that that's what needs to happen, and I hope we can proceed to an orderly leadership competition.
I'm glad you touched on sort of the politics versus personality as well, because I mean, how difficult is it as a Conservative MP at the moment? Because I imagine, I mean, for you've been ferociously campaigning, to get this decision when it comes to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and get that investment in, and I know that announcement's been delayed and delayed and delayed again, and we're now at a point where, I mean, if this is getting in the way, will we get that decision before the end of the month? So it must be quite frustrating in the way that there are policies and there are things you want to get sorted, not only for your own constituents, but I mean, as a party, as a country. But of course, I assume quite a lot of people do just want to talk to you about Mr. Johnson and about what's happening in Westminster.
Well, when I'm in northwest Norfolk talking to constituents, actually the top of their mind is what's happening with the QEH campaign. I think part of the issue that we've had here is that the distraction that's come from how certain events and issues have been handled has taken the oxygen and taken the coverage away from what we should be focusing on, which is delivering on the manifesto pledges. I fear that now that we've got a new health secretary who's come in, and now obviously the Prime Minister's going, there may well be a further delay in announcements in how that new hospital programme will be taken forward. Obviously, it's encouraging that Steve Barclay is the health secretary. His son was born at QEH. He's previously supported me and my efforts to secure funding for the hospital. But I know from his time when he was a health minister looking at infrastructure, he will be wanting to look at the programme and where it is to make sure it's delivering the best value for money. So I will obviously continue to lobby him for a decision as soon as possible. But I think the reality is that we're going to have to wait a bit longer now to get that decision. But that's what most people are interested. Of course, people have been concerned and expressed their views about the Prime Minister to me, which I've reflected upon. And now I've reached the point where I had called on him to go. I wasn't in that place previously, but we're now in that situation. And now we need to get the candidates out there putting forward their agendas so that we can restore those high standards, get a real focus on delivering what people need. We've got this major economic challenge with higher bills that people are facing. So we need to focus on measures that are going to grow the economy and continue to get people into employment.
And I mean, when it comes to the Conservative Party, so I mean, where do you see the future? Do you think you can restore that trust? And we were having this conversation yesterday, and all the messages I was hearing was, it's the trust, the integrity. That's the basis. And there's a lot of messages going, well, we don't know who will replace him. I mean, all parties, all politicians, they're all the same. One of the messages I got yesterday. So how do we move forward with this?
Well, I think pretty much universally, whether from all sides of the House, people go into Parliament to do the best for their area, to represent their constituents and make a difference in public life. That's what people go into it for. And I'm happy to say that about my Labour colleagues as much as Conservatives ones. But I think it is important that the candidates who come forward now have a plan and are able to demonstrate the integrity and the high standards that we need to see back in the heart of government, because that becomes a distraction from what we're all here to do, which is to improve the lives of our constituents and to benefit our country and to take steps to move us forward. And that's become a bit of distracted by some of the things that have been going on. So I will be looking at the candidates who put themselves forward, and obviously integrity and restoring those high standards will be one of the major things that I will be taking into account when I consider who to support.
Is anyone that's taking your fancy at the moment?
Well, and I think there have been several people who've declared, but I will obviously wait to see all the candidates who've declared before then speaking to them and then hearing what their pitch is and what their commitment is and how they see they can help take forward the country and deal with the major issues that we face. So I'm not going to rush to an early judgment on who to support.
I appreciate that. James, it's lovely to chat to you. Thank you again for coming on this morning. James Wilde, the Conservative MP for North West Norfolk.